Hello everyone, this is Nowaier Alqahtani and I'm a master's student at Abu Dhabi School of Management. Today I
Presentations.
will be presenting an
Generate by
exploratory
AI.
study titled An Exploratory Analysis of Environmental Concern and Green Consumption Behavior in the UAE. So this study focuses on understanding how consumers think about sustainability and, more importantly, how they actually behave when making purchasing decisions. So the goal is not only to understand attitude, but also to understand real behavior. Let me start with the problem. So many consumers say they care about the environment. They express strong concern and positive attitude towards sustainability. However, when it comes to an actual purchasing decisions, they do not always choose green or sustainable products. In the UAE, the issue is particularly interesting. There is a high environment awareness, especially among younger consumers, but in reality, factors like price, style, and practicality often dominate purchasing decisions over sustainability. So what is the key barrier? Even consumers who care about the environment hesitate to act. There are three main reasons. First, green products are often more expensive. Second, people are skeptical about green claims and worry about greenwashing. Third, there is limited trust in eco-labels, and this leads to what we call the attitude behavior gap. People have positive attitudes, but their behavior does not always follow. And this is important because it shows that awareness alone is not enough to drive real behavior change. Based on this study, the study addresses four research questions. First, is there a divergence between environmental concern and actual behavior, especially willingness to pay and switching attention? Second, how does green skepticism relate to these behaviors? Third, how do economic factors, particularly income, influence willingness to pay and switching? And fourth, do these patterns differ across demographic groups such as gender, age, education, and nationality? Together, these questions help us to understand not only what people think, but why they act the way they do. Let me briefly discuss what previous studies have found. First, the attitude behavior gap is well established. Environmental concern alone is not enough to protect behavior when economic factors are involved. Second, price sensitivity is a major barrier. Even environmental conscious consumers hesitate when they need to pay more. Third, trust and skepticism play a critical role. If consumers do not trust green claims, they are less likely to act. Finally, demographic factors matter, especially income and education, which tend to influence behavior more than gender or age. And these findings show that the problem is not new, but it's still not fully understood. So what is new in this study? Most previous research focused on one factor at times, such as price or attitude. In this study, we examine multiple factors together, including environmental concern, skepticism, perceived effectiveness, and economic capacity. So instead of looking at these factors separately, we try to understand how they interact. This is important because real-world consumers' behavior is shaped by multiple factors at the same time, not just one. Now let me explain the methodology. So this is an exploratory study using a survey. We collected data from 100 respondents in Dubai using convenience sampling. Most respondents were between 25 and 34 years old with a balanced gender. Income levels were mostly middle to high, and most participants had at least bachelor degree. We used a 5-point Likert scale to measure environmental concern, skepticism, and perceived effectiveness, willingness to pay, and switching attention. Although the sample is exploratory, it is still provides useful insight into consumer patterns. Now we move to the result, which is the most important part. So let me start with the income. The data shows a very clear pattern. As income increases, willingness to pay and switching attention also increases significantly. This suggests that income is one of the strongest predictors of green behavior. In simple terms, green consumption is not only about caring for the environment, but also about being able to afford it. So even if consumers have high concern, their ability to act depends on their financial capacity. This also suggests that green consumption may be more accessible to higher income groups. Now, looking at the education, we also see a clear pattern. Highly educated response show the highest willingness to pay, the highest switching attention, and the lowest skepticism. In contrast, response with lower education levels show lower behavior commitment and higher skepticism. And this may be because education increases awarenesses and also improve trust in sustainability related information. Now let's look at the relationship between the concern and behavior. The study finds that there is no major gap overall. Environmental concern is strongly correlated with both willingness to pay and switching attention. However, there is a small but important difference. Switching attention is higher than willingness to pay, and this means that people are more willing to switch to green products if the price is similar, but they hesitate when they need to pay more. So the issue is not willingness to act, but willingness to pay. Now let's look at the green skepticism. So the results show a strong negative relationship. Consumers with low skepticism show very high willingness to pay and switching attention. In contrast, consumers with high skepticism show very low scores. So this highlights the importance of trust. Even if consumers care about the environment, they will not act if they do not trust the product claims. Finally, let me conclude. The study shows the green consumption is not driven by environment concern alone. It is shaped by the interaction of concern, trust, and economic capacity. So income and education play a major role while skepticism reduces behavior commitment. Based on these findings, there are two key recommendations. First, companies should improve credibility through transparent and trustworthy green claims. Second, green products should be made more affordable to reach a wider audience. So overall, if we want consumer to act, we need to make a green product both credible and accessible, not just visible. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind attention.